So let me share my screen. Welcome to day 4 training. Today we're going to be talking about data collection and tools. Data collection and tools. Now, of course, when it comes to the procedures of research, your data collection and the tools in which you are collecting the data is very, very important. Because if the tools are not valid, if they are not reliable, if they are not accurately, or if the data are not accurately collected, it can affect your findings or affect your results. So you want to ensure that your data collection process, how you are collecting data, whether you are doing an experiment, you are collecting data from a questionnaire, or in any form, you want to ensure that it is of quality and it is of high standard, and the tools you are also using are reliable, they are valid. Now, the golden rule for data collection and tools is that it should always be reliable. That means, does your tool give the same result every time? Is it consistent? If you are going to use a particular tool and another researcher or another scientist is going to experiment or practice with what you have, is it going to give the same results? Even if it does not give exactly the same results, are there going to be variations between the results? For example, I might use a meter rule to measure the length of an object or the length of a specimen. It might give me 10 centimeter. Another person might use that same meter rule, to measure exactly the same specimen or exactly the same object. It might give 9.8 centimeter. That's, slightly different, just slight differences. But that doesn't mean that if another person tries use that same tool to measure exactly the same object, there will not be zero error per se. It might be 6 centimeter. So is your tool reliable? The second thing here is the validity. Does your tool measure actually what it claims to measure? How valid is your data collection tool? How accurate is validated? It has validated skills. You have tested it before. You have tested the validity before, and you have found out that okay, it's very accurate and very sensitive to any form of data. And this is always better than making up your own claims or making up your own questions that this instrument is actually very good, it is better in research, it is valid. You have to test whether it is valid. Now, we'll be looking at different data collection methods. They are broadly of two categories. We have the general primary data and we have the secondary data. So when you are gathering primary data or when you are obtaining secondary data, it just depends on their source. So primary data, this is directly collected information from its source. Let's say you're performing an experiment or you are collecting data by an observation or real-time research work. That's what we call primary data. It is like being on the front line, engaging with subjects or phenomena firsthand. An example includes surveys, interviews, or an experiment. Basically, that's primary data. That's the first data. For secondary data, you are using primary data or existing information that others have collected. It is like exploring a library of knowledge that is already being assembled. So let's say you are doing a literature review and you're looking at what others have already done. You're looking at their experimental work, their interviews, their survey, what are the statistics, and gathering data from already existing information. Example include, of course, literature review, data repositories, and any form of content or any form of text. Now let's look at some of the data collection tools, and depending on the type of data that we are collecting, don't forget that we have quantitative data that deals with numbers, that deals with anything that can take on numerical value, and we have qualitative data that deals with experiences and anything that can take on nominal value, concepts, or ideas. Now, quantitative data collection tools, the examples are you want to use Google Forms or Microsoft Forms or Kobo Toolbox to collect to generate structured surveys in order to collect data from a large group of people or from a particular population. You want to collect your surveys or questionnaires. Questionnaires are actually very, very good for Google Forms. And we have the biophysical measurements. You're using lab equipment, you're using blood pressure monitors or weighing scale that of course must be calibrated. It must be measured. Is it in millimeter, centimeter? What is the unit of calibration? So, and we also have secondary data. Let's say you want to collect secondary quantitative data. You have to use existing records from hospital folders, from the NHIS, or from the WHO database. So you can find from different databases in order to collect secondary data, while these are for primary data. And don't forget to pilot test your study data collection tool on 5 to 10 people before the real study to catch errors. You are testing the validity of your data collection tools. So let's say you are having a research work, you are collecting the ideas or the response of 100 people from a particular school or from a particular office. You are going to send out questionnaires that you generate using Google Forms. And before you do that on a large scale of people, test it on a small scale to see if there's any discrepancy or there's any errors in your data collection tools. This is just to prove the validity or the accuracy of your data collection tool or of your data tool. So pilot test or pre-test your tool before bringing it out to the real studies. Now we have qualitative data collection tools, and of course, qualitative data are data that does not involve numerical value. There are experiences, there are ideas or concepts, perceptions, and the likes. We have in-depth interviews, which is you want to go one-on-one, you want to have one-on-one conversation or personal experiences with some group of people. And we can see this in documentaries, in-depth interviews, and we have focus groups. We want to talk to a group of people to see how and to see their perspective, their opinions. I want to collect this quantitative data. We have observation. We are watching the observation in natural settings. Example is how doctors interact with patients, how students behave after the release of their academic results and the likes. And of course, you can also go digital. You want to use audio recording to collect real-time data, essential for data accuracy, and you cannot just necessarily rely on memory. You want to go on audio or video. So each of these data collection procedures or techniques have their advantages, disadvantages, and their applications. Now, of course, there are various methods, but there are other methods: vision statements, internet mission, sales reports, any form of reports from any credible database. It might not necessarily be surveys, interviews, or the likes. So when it comes to research per se, one of the most important things is to know what kind of study you are doing in order to know what kind of data you have to collect. If you are doing an experiment, you cannot be looking for what has been done before to collect your own data. You are looking for your own first-hand information of your original experiment. That means you are collecting primary data, and you can use different data collection tools to collect primary data. You can also use Excel to store, to impute any information, any values or variables that you might have observed during your experiment. There are various data collection tools that you can use. But if you are doing a review or an overview study or a comprehensive review study, that means you are collecting secondary data, you are reading it, and you are coming to a conclusion. So it just depends on the kind of study design that you have. It now determine what type of data tools you are going to use and what method or procedure of um, data collection you are going to carry out. And that is all for data collection and tools. In our next training class, we'll talk about data analysis and statistics.